There he is.
There we go.
Hey, buddy, how are you?
Good. How are you?
It's funny. I this is my first live
Yeah.
with another person. I did a test run last night, and I just go on here now. And I said to my wife as it's going live, I said, "Wait, how do you invite anybody?" And then as people are joining, I was like, "Yeah, this is perfect. This feels right."
Awesome. Yeah, we learn as we go.
We just did. Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. How you doing?
I'm managing.
Yeah.
It's this week has a different feel to it for sure, and
Mm-hmm.
I think all of us as humans and also in our industry are probably feeling something similar. I followed some of the stuff you put out,
Yeah.
and it seems like our markets as different. Like how many annual sales do you guys have in your marketplace?
On the real estate system, we were on track for about 85,000 sales.
Yeah,
But then there's two ends on each sale, right?
right.
So it's there's a lot of transactions that go on.
Yeah, for our whole region, we're 6,500, 7,500 a year
Yeah.
total. But despite that difference, our markets are behaving amazingly similar. When you go down to the fundamentals of it both, it's pretty interesting.
What I was talking about this morning, I did CTV this morning, and I
Yep.
didn't want to regurgitate the same thing I said on Global. So I
Yep.
kept thinking like, how else can you put this? And it was kind of like it went from like, typical supply and demand. It's
Yep.
want versus need. So like I want to sell my house, I want to buy a house.
Yep.
And from March 15th onward, it switched to
Yep.
a need, right? It was, I need to sell my house. I need to buy my house.
Yep.
And I mean, the numbers coming out, and we'll go over like, what those actually are for our different markets, but they could be way worse. Like, let's put it that way.
Yep.
It's crazy that through all of this, like people are still kind of trying to make things happen. But obviously at a completely different level than before.
Yeah, the underlying motivation and there's a whole number of segments of the market that just flat out don't exist.
Yeah.
And so I equate to some extent what right now is like, we have a serious blizzard and everything just stops. And I say to a seller, if we do an open house back when we used to do open houses,
Right.
we did an open house during a blizzard and you had two people come through, that's more powerful than or more for me.
Yep.
It means more than 32 people on a sunny day in May.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're sort of in a blizzard right now. So
Yep.
If you have a showing booked for next Friday, and that's all you got on the radar right now, well, man, those people next Friday, they're not messing around, right?
That's literally what I said this morning. I was like, the feeling of getting a showing on a listing is the same feeling I used to get when we got an offer on a listing, right? So it's just like the mindset's changed. And the best analogy I've ever heard is like when people ask like, well, how's the market? What's going on? What's going on in the market? And it's like the real estate market is like the weather. There's no good weather or bad weather. There's just inappropriate clothing choices. So I thought that was kind of funny. Like, snowboarders are going to love when it snows, right? Like runners are going to love when it's sunny. Farmers are going to like the rain. Like, so for our market, like, the whole, it's always a great time to buy and sell, we both know is kind of crap. But it's like, what's going on in your specific pocket and how's it affecting you? Because macro, all these big numbers and stuff it's easy to get tangled up in it. But I wouldn't look too much further than you're kind of just a few blocks each way and different price points. And one thing I've been noticing is that the higher end of the market took an even bigger pause than the rest of the market. And when those and when those high end properties aren't selling, that's bringing down the average sale price significantly, right? So it's just all these like little things that it's hard to know exactly what's going to happen, but I think it's macro is where people should be spending their time here, not looking at the big picture, because it doesn't matter what's happening in Calgary if you own a home in Niagara. Like you need to know your pocket.
Yeah, and I was digging. I think we're sort of similar. Well, right down to the fact is you're in your office right now, right?
Yeah, I snuck out today. Yeah, so my dog wouldn't bark.
I've got a basketball net in my office as well.
Yeah, a $1 bill in a basketball net for good luck.
Nice, that's good stuff.
Yeah.
So we're similar in a lot of ways, and so I was sort of digging through the numbers the other night here in Niagara, and we saw we do that. We're on a different program than you, but I'm sure you can do it on yours, where you can pull apart the number of sales per price segment.
Sure. Yep.
So in our land, 3 to 350 actually exists, 350 to 4 and onward and upward. 500 to 600 was sort of ruling the day as far as the number one price segment, and not significantly, but significantly above its competitors as far as second, third, fourth place. And what we saw, exactly what you just said, was that level out and a redistribution to where now we've got a good number of sales happening in 3 to 350, 350 to 4, which doesn't, and I would say, if I'm a seller and I've got a house worth 750, is my house now worth less? I don't think that's the case. I think right now the way the market's behaving is just a bit different.
Well, I think too, I had some scenarios where we sold people's properties in early March or February, and they got great prices. And then even though it wasn't ideal, they bought in let's call it COVID times, and they got great prices. So they actually came out ahead. But then the flip side, we also had some people on the other side that, really needed to sell, and it hasn't been easy, right? So it's it all depends on your situation, how you're looking at this. And at least in our market, because when you were talking about the level of the market that's still selling, I would say our number, we're similar, but ours is under $1 million, right? In terms of pricing, and anything under 600,000 still selling very quickly in Toronto. It's just the different ranges and knowing what you're looking for, but it's changing day by day. And I think the general public, when they come out with these numbers, year over year numbers, they mean nothing right now. They mean nothing. The year over year is irrelevant. We can't. Yeah.
I've never loved the 1 month year over year reports period anyway, because it doesn't show, as you know, and more so in the last 5 years in this business, all 5 years, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, they've all behaved completely different, especially April's. April 2020 is like Chinese food and chocolate pudding with the other years, right? And 2016 April, we all remember what happened then.
Yep.
Here, that was back when we saw 22, 23% price increases in this amount of time. And so to look at year over year on April, especially, this is the most unique April we'll ever have. You messaged mentioned March 15th. For me, it was March 13th when the NBA was shut down.
That's when people started taking it seriously.
Yeah, it was that. And wait, Tom Hanks is positive?
Yeah.
Holy crap, kids, get down here. We got to talk. And because our market, we had a monster, and I think a lot of places did. We had a monster 2020 happening. Mm-hmm. February set records on pricing, not just for February, but for 1 month pricing. February was the highest in Niagara's history.
Wow.
And that we have a lot of cities in Niagara that have low volume, where it's harder to put a lot of weight into it.
Right.
But when you look at the bigger macro picture, St. Catharines, the same thing. And then also third highest sales volume for February, behind 16 and 17. And again, that was when we set all-time sales records all time.
Yeah.
So we had a huge market going into, and then so the March year-over-year reports, March still held its weight, even though 2 of the weeks basically had its arms tied behind its back.
Yeah, I'll read you. I'm just looking on my screen here because I pulled some numbers, some actual true numbers that not the real estate boards aren't going to put out there, and in
those are my favorite numbers, by the way.
Yeah, the peak of the market. Let's call it. And to be fair, what you were just saying, the first 2.5 months of 2020, you were almost kind of thinking I don't know if this price growth is great, because you can't keep going at this level, right? You don't want it to shoot up too much. You want it to kind of go like this, because really the only person that benefits would be the seller exiting the market and not buying again. Everything else is relative as you're jumping up. So in March, just in the 416 area code of kind of core Toronto, average prices in April were down 7% from March. Detached homes were down 14%. Semis were 5%. Townhouses were 5%, and condos were actually 14%. So it's month over month. But what I look at that and think is we talked about the higher end stuff not selling, so it's bringing down the average prices, and that anybody that sold their property in April, I would say, needed to sell, really needed to sell, or probably just got bad advice, right? So The joke I was going to make is like the only people getting haircuts in April were like sellers that needed to sell, right? So it was just like it. But I think actually, the first 5 weeks of this, it was like radio silence, right?
Yep.
And the last 2 weeks, like I had 2 buyer calls this morning. Our team's prepping 4 properties for the market. It seems like people are ready to get it going again.
Yeah.
But I would say, like, what's your opinion on this? So I would say for the first time in a long time, there's actually opportunities for buyers in the marketplace.
Yeah, the sellers have been running the show for a long time, right?
Yep.
And I've seen you talk about it, and you actually, and I can't remember who the other person was, inspired me to look at the numbers here.
Mm-hmm.
The big piece of the puzzle was, and you put it perfectly, was sales down 50, 60%. The difference between now and the 2008 market was people weren't scared of getting sick to sell their home.
Yeah.
You weren't going to get the flu because some multinational corporation went under, right? So inventory kept piling up.
Yep.
So as a result, buyers really had the gloves on back then. But now, and what you said was, Niagara, for example, 62% drop in sales.
Mm-hmm.
That's Niagara as a whole.
Sure.
For April.
Yeah.
55% drop in new listings. 52%.
So
something like that.
pretty close.
You guys were both in the 60s.
Yeah, it was 67% for sales and 64% for lower for new listings. So it was almost like they kind of just,
They canceled the road.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
And so I started really nerding out, and I went city by city to cities that had volume anyway. The cities that had really low volume, like we had some, like Niagara Lake, for example, had 8 sales. Like you can't put too much into that, right?
Sure.
But when you took a look at the larger volume cities, the cities where new listing inventory was only down, 10, 15%, everybody had sales down 50 to 60%. Everybody. Nobody escaped that. So the cities where listing inventory piled on, it was a prime example of all of a sudden the buyer said, wait a second, I analogize the hell out of everything. Sure. I was looking at it, today I've got 2 restaurants to choose from. I'll wake up tomorrow and suddenly there's 5 others, right? So the cities where they just kept piling up new listings, those are the ones where the prices actually come down. Like we've got a city in Niagara here where new listings only came down 10%, but sales came down 62%. They lost 10% pricing. Yeah. Small sample size, but it was an example of the difference, how the buyer sees the supply, and then all of a sudden they feel they're in a different position.
I was going to ask you, so I saw one of the comments when we first started this was so if someone had purchased, like, let's say March 12th, right? What advice would you give them? Because I know for me, and I don't want to take your answer, but like everything for real estate, it should never be trying to perfectly time the market. It should be focusing on your full time in the market, right? Like a real estate transaction, you shouldn't be doing it to flip it in a year for the most part. Like this should be a 3 to 5 year plan minimum, right? So just the only thing that concerns me is what the true unemployment will be as we continue to go here. Like, because I think interest rates are going to be great. I think population and immigration, when the time comes, I think a lot of people are actually going to want to continue to come here. Mm-hmm. So I'm just trying to think, like, if someone bought the day before this happened, like, what would you tell them?
Well, and you've said it a few times. It really depends on the big picture of what they're doing. Are they selling? Are they buying? Are they coming into the market from outside? And vice versa? And also what did they buy? I think there was decent deals back then. Mm-hmm. There's decent deals now. We haven't seen pricing get beat up yet. Yeah. Like for St. Catharines, for example, because St. Catharines is the largest volume city in Niagara. Yeah. We've still seen prices increase. Year to date, I think is up 5%, something like that. Yep. And we're at 451 grand, something like that, right?
Interesting.
And so we haven't seen where, like you said earlier, where we've seen changes is in different price brackets or very specific areas of the city or the region.
Yeah.
So it's really a place by place sort of thing. And you can take the reverse of that, and somebody who was thinking of selling and sold before 2016-17 happened, right?
Right. Yep.
And I don't know about in your market. I know in our market there was some litigation from sellers who had a really long closing, who said, wait a second, that house across the street just got 65 grand more than I did. And even though I sold 4 months ago, the market moved that quickly, right?
Yep.
So there's always that two sides of the coin, but we haven't seen a significant, like where the house that somebody bought March 12th for 500 grand, all of a sudden they could get it for 440. That's not happened here.
Yeah. What I look at in the Toronto market so far is like, if you're going to list your property today, you're not going to get February, early March pricing. Like that's not going to happen today. Like it's not going to be even. I've seen for the most stuff that's selling, it's almost like this just, at least in our market, it pushed us back to like end of 2019 prices. So it's like almost kind of just pushed us back to the beginning of the year.
What percentage difference would that have been?
I would say, well, we were having a hot start to the year. So it's actually, again, like we're comparing it to 2 months, because the first 2 months, our market probably went up like 9%. Like it was moving at a pace that probably wasn't realistic anyways. Right. So, I'm not overly concerned about what's going to happen in the future. And that's not like some sales guy talk. Like that's looking at numbers and someone that owns real estate as well. Like I'm not going to list my properties just because right now, like I'm holding tight. The bigger thing that actually happened, I'd be interested to how it's affecting your market. So Airbnb, first of all, the rules changing in Toronto was already going to happen. And then the Swift, like you cannot rent it out only if it's a medical worker. And we've seen a flood of condo listings for lease, and now a few trickle onto the sale market. Have you noticed any of that in your marketplace?
Yeah, so actually was looking up the last 30 days in the year to date, and then I was looking up active listings. And I'll be honest with you, I don't track rentals a whole lot. We don't have like the condo market. You'd laugh if we could, that could be a whole other talk. The condo market in Niagara is the majority of condo apartment style are in St. Catharines. And we're talking about, and there's a bunch of realtors on here that can correct me, but we're talking about a dozen buildings.
Right.
15 buildings. A handful were purpose-built condos, a handful of conversions, that sort of thing. But we never had this wave where people were buying unit after unit to Airbnb it, right? But where we've seen a lot of rental property purchases in the last 5 years has been for houses, new houses in particular. And so I did see a whole bunch of active listings in the $1,800 to $2,500 a month detached house range. And like I said, the Airbnb side of things, like who saw that coming, right?
Yep. Well, I mean, in Toronto, we knew the rules were going to change, but it was a hard stop. And like that, the rental market's being affected much more than the sales market in Toronto right now. And that's why I said like the very beginning, what we were talking about is like, if you were buying and selling in the last 60 days, it's a need, not a want. Right. So a lot of people just tried to make it happen. I wanted to quickly ask you, we had a few properties, and we do a lot of condos in Toronto where the buildings just flat out said like no more showings, and we had properties that we had to sell, and it became very difficult. Are you finding that buyers are willing to purchase 100% without seeing it, like just through virtual tours, floor plans, pictures, videos, without stepping foot inside the property?
I've personally had that happen once during this. I can't speak for why. And again, there's a whole bunch of local realtors on here that I'm seeing. Hi, Doug, by the way. I don't know if anybody else wants to chime in if they've seen that happen or not. That's actually one of my questions I had for you right now, or was thinking about it, was on the condo side of things. Like for us, going into show a house, you can take precautions or whatever. Your own personal business, you're in the heart of downtown, right?
Yes, I am. Yeah.
So out of 10 showings, how many of those are going to be condo apartment style?
Probably for our team 7. Like it's 70% of our business.
Yeah, I'm curious how you guys are managing that, just from a health and safety. So you're saying some buildings, I guess the condo board are voting in to say no showings or limiting it in some capacity.
Yeah, we have a list of buildings that just aren't allowing showings. And again, like, I don't blame them. I fully understand. I've seen a lot of comments here, and this is what's happening. So a lot of people are making offers conditional on seeing the property. So you agree a price on everything, and then they go see it. And we had that where I actually sold one of my listings to a buyer in Vancouver that never set foot, but I ended up letting his agent in, and they FaceTimed the buyer directly and showed them.
That was our situation as well. The agent
right
the house in FaceTime for about an hour and a half, and that was their tour.
But I would assume those buyers were in a need to buy position, because I can understand, like, the argument at the beginning was like, okay, well, the new home sales, people have been buying off plans for years, right? But it was brand new. You could do a PDI. You could make sure things were okay.
Something.
Like after this is over, whatever that new normal is, like, people are not buying virtually. And for I know probably a lot of people watching this are realtors anyways. Like, I actually think the strong ones are going to come out of this like with amazing businesses, because people need people that know what they're talking about right now. Like, you need to hire someone that knows what's up. And virtual buying is not going to become a thing. Like, people want to feel it and touch it.
Yeah, so that's actually a question and there's a bunch of people on here that probably, no disrespect, don't know a lot about your background and how you got to where you got to now in the down. Because for us in Niagara, we've got 1,000 agents, 1,100 agents. You guys have what, like 3 million or something like that?
You know what the math is? It's 54,000, and the population of Toronto is like or GTA is like 7 million. So if you do just quick math, it's 1 in every 128 people have a real estate license, and you have to take away the people under 18. So it's really like 1% of the population in Toronto has a real estate license. Now, half of them don't trade, or some are like under teams where their names don't go on the deal. So these numbers are skewed, but like there's a lot, like, you got to do something to stand out. There's a lot.
So you got into business, Tom, when you're how old?
I'm 28 now.
When you got in, you were 20.
I was 22.
Okay. And you got in and you started in the rental game, right?
Yeah. I mean, I had no choice. Like, I didn't get into condos as a strategic business plan. It was like, I did this out of university. My whole kind of building my database in my first year was just doing rentals, learning all the buildings downtown. I sold a few properties as well, and it ended up okay. But like, my 22-year-old friends at the time certainly couldn't afford to buy. Most of them couldn't even afford to lease. And at that point, their parents weren't trusting me, right? The joke I used to make is, but I'm the nice guy that's 22 and used to get drunk in their basement. Like, it was a completely different, a lot's changed where now a lot of the parents are my clientele. But it was frustrating. Like, my first year in real estate wasn't easy. I'll be honest. Like, it was tough, but you grind it out. You focus on being good and knowing your stuff.
Yeah. I just did something on my screen. Sorry, because I keep having things come up here.
Yeah, no worries.
I brought up the thing to do a comment. I'll get rid of it by saying hi, everyone. Remember those? How do I get rid of that? There we go. Nice.
You got it?
Those
you got it? There we go.
Badges? I knew when I'm trying things.
Yeah, exactly. Like that.
So yeah. And for me, like, I had a friend years ago who was in the real estate business. Here's a trivia question for you.
Sure.
So when a buyer does, I'm saying this to people that may not know, when a buyer does an offer conditional on the sale of the property, they bring an offer to the seller and they say, this offer is conditional on the sale of our property, 123 Main Street, on or before, whatever. So we in the biz call it an SOP offer. How many SOP offers have you done in your years? None, right?
None.
Yeah.
Never.
I love it.
No.
So
never.
Today, all the Toronto agents I've ever asked, I've got a grand total of 1 SOP. And he actually called me. He said, I'm sorry, I got to ask you, how do you do an SOP offer? So for us, like, I look at our marketplace. When I get a call to go and see a property or something, my maximum drive is 17 minutes.
Sure.
18, 21, who knows?
Yeah.
But like in that vicinity. So I just find it's amazing. So a 22-year-old, you start off in the meat and potatoes of downtown Toronto doing rentals, and then where do you go from there?
The biggest thing
All the
was,
clients.
yeah, I built the client base from doing the rentals, and you know, the during the buying or selling process is obviously important. You got to be great and treat people right, and you have to
Yeah.
know what you're doing. But the secret to like, running a great referral business is the after unit. It's once you've done your job, how are you consistently staying in touch with people and providing value? So my whole kind of business is built on like a simple philosophy of like, you have like visibility beats ability. So you got to
Right.
know your stuff. That's absolutely true. But if
Yeah.
nobody knows you know your stuff, why would they call you? Like, there's
Yeah.
lots of realtors that do a lot of business that are no smarter than anyone else, but they're
Yeah.
out there. And so
Yeah.
whatever that means, that for me, it was putting myself out there on video because I don't like writing blogs, right? I was
Yeah.
better on video than writing. But for other people, it's blogs. It's having client events. It's just being the realtor in your community with all the for sale signs. Like that's being visible, right?
Yeah.
So that's really what took it from like at a point and then making the decision, okay, I no longer do rentals. I only do sales. And then starting to kind of bring on a team.
So then next thing you know, you mentioned you're on CTV this morning. You're on Global a couple of days ago. How did you get into that sort of
Yeah.
realm, that world? Because it's amazing to, when you Google you come up with all these things, and it gives you this instant like advancement as far as if I didn't know anyone and I go in and I see this guy, the street cred with that is incredible. And I admire just from the sort of, I think more realtors need to have a better fundamental understanding of the marketplace. And analogy alert, I look at it as, you go in to get your knee x-rayed, and does your doctor come in with the x-ray and go, oh my God, that's crazy, right? Or do they come in and they say, well, here's exactly what's going on with your knee.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
the realtors that come in, like back when we had the 2016-17 market, my colleagues that are in here would remember, I tried to ban the word crazy because that's all agents were saying. How's the market? Crazy. How's your knee looking? Oh, it's crazy, right? So for you obviously you spend a lot of time on the system and learning
Sure.
buildings and the nuances of the market and everything else. And the next thing you know, you're in the media.
Yeah. So that was something completely unexpected. Again, that wasn't part of the plan.
Yeah.
I started making monthly video updates for my database in December of 2015, and I've done it every single month since. So that's how it started. And I would make them for my people, and I would send it to them. But because I had already made it, then I'd leverage it and put it on every other platform because why not, right?
Right.
And that's what I love so much about it is that like I go back to before I talked about the visibility thing. All I was doing is showing people that I knew what I was talking about.
Right.
And then a friend of a friend who knew someone that was a programmer at CTV saw something and realized I was comfortable in front of a camera and could talk, and this opportunity came up, right? Yeah. So it's just so crazy where I did it and then they kept calling, and then now, I've been doing it for like 3 years, and with all these different, like I got quoted in the New York Times 2 weeks ago. Like that's what I said was nothing special, but it's just like what the benefit you get out of these small things. And like for anyone that runs a business, I don't care if it's real estate or not, but it's like success or whatever that is all the boring tasks done day after day after day. And what I tell my clients too, because me being on the media, I can't talk about their property. So for them, it's like, hey, what's the benefit to me other than the fact? And what I say is like, I have to go on live TV every 2 weeks, and I know the numbers better than anybody else because if I didn't, I'd look like a fool.
Yeah.
Right. So that's and the big thing, if you ever get media opportunities, you say yes every time. Sure. Make time. If you say no, they're not going to call you back.
Yeah. Yeah. We've always operated on our team, my partner Jim and I in particular, just say yes and then figure it out. Right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Your first instinct is to say no, then you probably should say yes. Because a lot of times it's no different than Instagram Live.
Yeah.
The reason I haven't done it is because of that voice that tells you you're going to sound stupid, you're going to look stupid, nobody's going to want to watch or whatever. Right? All these voices, right? And the more you can press mute on all those voices, and then you get out and you do it. And I think it's huge. I think that awareness with clients, and also as an agent, like if you meet buyers for the first time, or you do an open house, or you meet people at a coffee shop or whatever, you feel much better about the value you bring to the table when you can actually sit down and articulate with facts and figures what's going on. And I think our industry benefits from the people that, like you said, the small little tasks consistently, persistently, don't stop doing it. And that's where you see results. And at the end, it's the business is incrementally more fun the more you do, right? Because it's more people you're interacting with and all the good stuff you get to do. So.
And you know what I was thinking as you were saying that about, like, you know, not wanting to do Instagram lives, or anyone that's nervous about doing video to their clients and things like that. I always think, like, first of all, it's hilarious to me that we're the industry that slabs our faces on anything they'll allow us.
Yeah.
But we won't go on video, which is a free medium. And other than face to face, it's the second best.
Yeah.
And then the kind of just like the tweak I made, and this is good for, I think, everybody, is like, it's not about you. Like, I don't tune into the news to watch one newscaster.
Right. Yeah.
I watch the news. So if you're getting a point across, like people are watching this because maybe they know me or you, but they're sticking around because they think the conversation's interesting. But it's not to stare at us. It's to hear what we have to say. So I think it's just, you know, you realize it's not about you. And once you get over yourself and realize it's just you're just the one saying it. But the client, you know, I don't know. It's just kind of a thought I've had. Like, people need to get over themselves, because it doesn't matter. Like, just get it across. What do you have to lose?
Yeah. And that's one thing I find that I've been thinking a lot about in the last couple of weeks is all the new things that we're doing in the business. Not we as an industry. There's some people that have been doing, you know, using forward-thinking tools for ages, right?
Yeah.
But these new things that are getting done, and how many of them are going to stick going forward, and how much of the industry is just going to snap back into what was comfortable and felt good and cozy before, right? The power of video, whether it's Zoom or FaceTime, the Matterport 3D tours, YouTube, all this other stuff, I think it's really shown, you know, when you take away all the other stuff that we can all do because it's easy, you take all stuff and all you have are these tools a lot of people kept behind their furnace all these years and knew they were there, but they ignored it. I think it'll be really interesting to see when you fast forward 6 months, 12 months, 18 months out, how many things have changed on how people do business. Because I think it's been a long time, you know, we're just getting to the point where people agree that professional photography might be valuable. Right? Like,
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, what I love so much about it is that you get to leverage your message, right? So you talk to one person, we forget, like, our clients, they meet us, they see us, we do our job for them, but they only see us. They don't kind of see all the other people we're talking to at the same time, you know, what we actually have to do to make a living. With video, I can record a message, I can leverage it, send it out to everybody at once. And then even from this one Instagram live, we could technically take this after. We could take the audio, turn it into a podcast, right? I could get it transcribed and turn it into a blog. Yeah. I could take 1 minute clips of a certain topic we talked about here and cut it up into a post. Like, I just think there's so many opportunities that you can use something. And for most stuff, like if it's an evergreen topic, you can record it once and you always have it. So if a client has a question about one thing, be like, great question. I can tell you, but I also recorded a video about it. They'll step by step everything you need to know.
Yeah. You podcasting yet?
No, that's the one thing I never kind of stuck to. I don't know. Maybe it's oversaturated now. I think there's too many.
There's so many great ones. And again, it's the ego things talking to me. It's like, why would you want to listen to me when you can listen to A, B, C, D, E, and F?
Right.
But it is, for me, I don't know. I think it's an interesting platform. This is sort of a podcast in a different format.
Yep.
Because like you said, you can take it out and spin it however you want afterwards. But I've seen a bunch of people do podcasts, and then it sort of slows down because, you know, like anything, unless you just keep cranking them out in some capacity, you realize, wow, there's a lot of work behind this thing.
Well, that's it. Like, whatever you're going to do to make yourself stand out, you have to agree with yourself when you write it down that you're actually going to do it. Because otherwise it's useless. Like, it has to be built into your business plan. And it has to be simple. It has to be simple. Because if you make it too complicated, you're just not going to do it.
Yeah. I've sketched out 25 podcasts, episodes, like all the bits and bobs, and it's just sitting in a book in my office.
Yeah.
the day that I wake up and I said I'm going to do it, but I'm not sure if that day is going to come or what.
I was thinking, how do you think of video ideas or blog ideas or anything ideas? Buyers and sellers typically have the same 10 questions that they always ask. So what if you just wrote those down? And then what I do a lot is I go to Google and type in Toronto real estate and then click on the news section and see what the headlines are.
Oh, yeah.
And then I just make a video on that because obviously the news thinks it's big enough to talk about it. Why don't I talk like my spin on it, right? So there's just so many ways to get, like, you don't need to, I think the ideas are the things that are holding people back, right?
Yeah. A little trick I do is if I'm with a client and they ask me a question, just like you said, afterwards I email it to myself or I voice note it. And but often I'll email it to myself, and in the subject I'll put blog or vlog or whatever it is. And then I can go back in my emails and just search that subject line, and then they're all there. And but 100%, I've been in this business for a little while, and I generally get asked the same 8 to 12 questions. Like when you go into a listing appointment, they're 3 words into the question, and you know where it is. And the challenge is you don't want to be canned, right? You want to communicate properly with people, but it's human nature, right? We all have the same fears and wants and dreams and all that other good stuff. So a GTA question for you.
Sure.
So a big change in our market in the last 5-6 years has been the influx. One of the questions we get from a seller, one of our 10 questions, is how are you going to reach the Toronto buyer? You guys are mythical beasts. You pull in your cars, you open your trunk, you got a tennis bag full of cash, and you overpay by 18%, right?
Fair enough.
But do you hear, like, what's the word in the street there amongst in the GTA crowd as far as Niagara? Do you hear a buzz? Like,
Yes.
It was always, the GTA buyer always existed to some capacity, but it's really in the last 5 years where, man alive, it's nonstop.
Yeah. So I think the term that best describes what you're talking about is drive till you qualify. I think that probably sums it up, to be honest with you. So you look at the price growth. Like the thing is, like, when we look into the future here, there's a lot of variables, question marks. We don't, like, who are we to say what's going to happen? That would be dumb to guess it, right?
Yeah.
By
the way,
but there's a housing shortage in Toronto. That's just reality. You look at the numbers over the past 10, 15, even go back 40 years, we've averaged 7% appreciation. That doesn't happen unless there's demand, right? So the more it goes up, the more people are willing to, and again, like, your market's not cheap. It's just less expensive than we are. Like, there's other markets you go to that are way less expensive than you are, but that's what I think it is. And it comes down to, the conversation I have a lot is, okay, if you're going to move out of Toronto, or if you're going to continue to work in Toronto, here's the question you have to ask yourself. What's your value of your time? So if you're going to commute an hour a day and it's 2 hours every single day, what do you value that at? Because you can get this house over here, a much bigger house for less, or you can buy this small thing in Toronto, but you can walk everywhere. You don't need your car. Like, what do you value? And people at different stages of life value different things. So it's happening more. And I mean, even right now, like, a lot of people that live in small spaces, could you imagine, like, what they're going through right now and being stuck inside? Like, they're going to want to look outside what we believe is the center of the universe, right? Like, they're going to want to keep going.
Yeah. And that's something I've heard a lot, both locally, and it's become a meme to some extent too, is through this isolation period, you really discover what your home is and family and all that other stuff. Right. Yeah. And I don't know, the demographic sort of shift is fascinating, because we watched it back before the 2016 market happened. We started hearing about 26 offers on a house in Hamilton, and then it was Stony Creek, and then it was Grimsby, and it was Beansville, and we as an industry were saying it for years, but we got pushback that the greedy realtors are just trying to drive the market up.
Sure.
But we said, if you look at all these places that are 22 minutes up the road, where it's going to cost you an extra $140,000 to get the same thing. People, like you said, the value of your time. Are people going to drive an extra, from 50 Road down to Victoria?
Yep.
That money. And then, so sure enough, once 16 happened, We went from 17, like St. Catharines, for example, we went from 1,700, 1,900 sales a year, going back to 2005, 06 markets. The last time we had double-digit price increases, we went from 1,700, 1,800, 1,900 sales to 2,500 sales. And a big driver of that was you uptown agents, and which I'm just kidding.
No,
and,
I hear you. I'm not driving to Niagara. I would refer to you, but
well, I've got
but some will.
Yeah. Well, we'd have, and other agents on here can probably speak up too. I've lost the thing where everybody's. Oh, there it is. Where oh yeah, look at that. I didn't. All these questions. Sorry, guys. Where people were driving down to show a house from Barrie,
Right.
Which I found incredible. And you know, it's the nature of the beast, right? We can sell anywhere in Ontario, but
Sure.
definitely the trend in the people movement side of things was pretty incredible.
I just don't think long term, and I know we both agree on this, but generalists aren't probably going to make it in this industry for a long time. Like if you're running around everywhere. Now, if you're strictly based on relationships and all your clients love you, all good. Like keep doing your thing. If that's, but yeah. You know, to a point, you don't have to be super narrow-minded, but like pick an area, master it. And once you believe you're getting the return you think you can get, then maybe try something else. But like, you know, people that are driving an hour and a half to show a property and then they're like, oh, it's just one showing. And then there's 6 showings later and they're, you know, I just think like if you really focus in on an area and master your craft, there's like, I think, you know, the money's in the niches, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like to use the other side of the road test. If I can't tell you what's on the other side of the road or what's behind that house, then I shouldn't be here.
Yeah,
right?
That's good.
So if somebody says, where's the closest X, Y, or Z? If I'm like, well, let me go on Google, then I'm probably not also going to be, I can tell you the bricks and mortar of the house. I can comment on that. And like I said, there are times where, you know, it's a close family or whichever, and you're going to give them some insight. But I know there's nothing like that local person who's slugged it out in front of their computer and knows every inch of the ground you're talking about.
It's even like when you look at sales numbers and like sometimes you know the reason that house sold for that amount, right? Like you actually like seeing it's one thing, but that's why like I don't think anyone should have ever been worried when they released the sales data because who cares? Like the data is one thing. It's how do you take it and analyze it? And people need help. People are no longer hiring us. Like our value sure as hell isn't opening a door. That's not our value. It's to give you a competitive advantage in the marketplace and help you negotiate. And that, you know, I've been doing this every day for 8 years. You've been doing this every day for longer.
2003.
Yeah. Right.
Whatever.
So you pick up these little things that to us seem obvious, but are saving people not only a bunch of money, but a bunch of time. Right. And I think that's where our true value is, right? Like
100%. And I could sit in front of anybody and defend that, not defend it, but make the point of, you know, you drive down a street, these houses were built in this era and these houses were built in this era. This house sold for X. This one is asking X. Here's why this one should be X minus 12%. But if you don't know any better, you look, well, let's draw a map, you know, 300 meters around the house and find, okay, there's 3 sales, therefore take the average and there's the price, which is insane. And there are streets within a half a kilometer of my house where on one side, you got a bungalow, it could be $100,000 more because it's a super desirable, has its own vibe going on, right?
Yep.
And that local thing. So let's go back to the GTA then.
Yep.
So for me to pull apart market data is pretty easy. How do you do it in a, you know, you said 80 something thousand sales a year. How do you make meaningful sense out of, or do you know, when it shows prices are up this or that, like for example, condos, you have such a range. Like condo is people think condo is only one thing, but you can have condo everything. Like how do you make sense of the data to parse it out?
Sure. So the big number that we really focus on is months of inventory. Like that's just pure at the end of every month, how many active listings, how many sales, divide them. That gives you a number. Anything under 3 is a seller's market. So actually the first thing we do when we meet with a buyer and seller is we say, okay, what's the ideal? Like if it's a seller, we know where they live. If it's a buyer, where are you buying? And we just for that specific pocket, we pull those numbers. And we say, okay, so based on this is why our pricing strategy should be this. Or if you're a buyer and there's a month and a half of inventory, well, it's going to be competitive. You're going to expect offer dates They're going to be listed low. So it's like taking the big picture as much as we can and funneling it down.
Yeah.
And just knowing that, like, you could, this, when the data is released, there's a million ways to make it say whatever you want it to say. Want. Yeah. And so I think it's just being careful of that, is don't get caught up in, and even just explain the simplest things. Like when the news reports that sales are down 67%, to us, that obviously means 67% less transactions happened. But to the average person sitting on their couch that hasn't moved in 20 years, they might hear that and go, my house is down 67%.
Right. Yeah.
Right. Like, so it's just, I would say, to answer the question, like a full circle way, is like simplify it as much as possible.
Yeah.
How about you?
Like if I'm doing an evaluation on a house, I'll come up, I've got this many comps.
Sure.
And I just keep chiseling. And then hopefully you got your diamond at the end, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I've seen on social media, the local press put out this 62% drop in sales and 55% drop in new listing inventory. And then the comments are, but still pricing goes up. And that's one thing that drives me crazy about, there's nobody there in that particular article, there wasn't proper translation of what those numbers really mean.
Yeah.
And sometimes I'll jump on and say something and immediately regret it.
Yeah.
Most of the time I just click out and, you can't get into that battle all the time.
You know what? My YouTube videos generally get pretty good feedback, but there was one where I posted when I was on Global, and I came up as they introduced me as like real estate expert or something. And the first comment was like, I know this is fake news because they called Tom an expert. Like, I didn't know this person, but just took a good, like, give him credit. It was hilarious. So I was you know what? That's good. And then he wrote back and actually said something positive. So it's like, when you get those comments, like, have fun with it. I actually think we can generate a ton of business by properly, professionally responding to 100%. Rude comments. Because when I'm going through a post on Facebook and I see it, all I'm doing is a comment section anyways. Like if something's happening, I'm like, oh, what's going on here, right? So I think you actually have an opportunity. Like, don't worry if someone says something rude. Just respond nicely and don't be an ass back to them, because it's just, you're never going to win. Even if you win, you're never going to win.
It will, even if you say you craft the most beautiful response and it takes you 22 minutes, you hit, it's never going to end. So what's the point?
It's just not worth it.
So a little nerd question for you then. So months of inventory, is that your favorite stat or the most useful stat for you as far as?
I would say it's the most useful for a general picture of just, is it a buyer, sellers, or balance market? Like the home price index number is probably more in tune with, but no one ever talks about that, where it's really not just average. And I really focus more on the median prices anyway. So you take out the outliers, but I would say, personally, if there's one thing, months of inventory, because the general consumer doesn't know what that means anyways. So it's a good starting point to explain to them that this is what you need to know. This will kind of base what your search or your sale is going to look like. How about you?
We have it on our program. Not a lot of people use it. I think it requires a certain amount of volume for it to make sense. No?
Agreed. Yep.
Yeah. And so if we've got a month, or if we have a market where there's only 500 sales in a whole year, like in a particular city, I don't know. I haven't put a lot of weight into it. A lot of people question me on that and why I don't use it, or why we don't use it. I love watching, and it's pretty niche, but the original list price, not the list price when it sells, but the original list price and the selling price, and throwing them up together, and watching that movement, because you can directly relate it. Like, it's a direct symptom of market activity. It's another way of looking at, the 3 months or less get in the seller's market for months of inventory. So when that original list price and sales price, the only one time those have intersected in the history of Niagara was April 2017 or 16. I blocked that.
So your list versus sale price has always been under 100 for the most part.
Well, that's right. And so it was 1 month where you saw that line, sort of, however I do that with my fingers, but where the B came over. But otherwise, it tracks. And when we get into January, February, when the sellers are feeling their most optimistic, and the buyers, they're most not quite there yet, you'll see a spread where you might have an average sale price of $440 and an average ask of $560, right? And it's interesting though, you can track that and relate it back exactly what's going on in the market, and you can do it in close to real time too.
Yeah.
But try communicating that, through. So sometimes it's just a matter of, like you said, is if I'm selling 123 Main Street, is I'm just going to drill right down to that and use that as the conversation piece.
One thing I had done before when we had kind of the brief slowdown in when things changed in 17 after kind of fair housing was after the initial price change on a listing, after that price change, how many days till sold? I thought that's an interesting stat. That's one that I look at all the time. And then the obvious one is like, so days on market we know is a completely skewed stat because it only tracks properties that actually sold, and it doesn't count if they've been relisted.
Yeah, I don't use days on market.
No, I know, because it doesn't mean anything.
So do you have CDOM?
No, we don't. No.
Well, this is one of my other favorites for local. Anybody that's on here that's a realtor that uses Matrix, don't use DOM, use CDOM. So CDOM is cumulative days in the market.
Makes sense. Yeah.
So it will take the listing. So let's say I've got it listed for 30 days and I relisted and then I relisted and relisted. It's going to take all those times. The only time it doesn't count is if 6 months goes by where it's not on the market. Gotcha.
Okay.
But my understanding is it'll even count if it expires or is canceled under me and you pick it up.
Oh.
It's going to count my days too, which there's argument both sides of why that shouldn't or should be allowed.
Sure.
But the CDOM can be 40% different than DOM, and DOM is what gets talked about, but it gets manipulated.
Yep, of course.
It's probably getting manipulated as we speak, and so CDOM is another check. I'd be surprised if you guys. Well, I'm
sure we have it. It's probably tucked into the stats there. I don't see it on my typical one. I think it's in the THEbTEAM market report, but you're right. That would be a much more telling number.
Yeah, you've got to dig into it a little, and it's only for us. That stat is only 4 years old, I think. So if I wanted to pull a 10-year graph on it, it's sitting at 0 for the first years. But super useful. So just to put a bow on it, actually two things. One question, because we've all had this idle time to research apps and tools and technologies that we otherwise didn't have time to. What's something that you're using that you love that if you didn't know about it, you'd want to know as a realtor?
There's an app called Spark Camera. Spark Camera. I think it's like $30 a year or something. Think of it as like if you were on Snapchat, you hold to get something, then you let go of your finger, and then you want to do something new, you hold again. So it's on the phones, it has a stabilization feature built in. So if you want to go to my personal account and look at any of my vacation things, I use it for all that. And if you're walking through a property, you can go like this, and it's cool because you don't have to cut it. You can end here, let go. Anyways, it's hard to explain, but Spark Camera and then Mojo, MOJO, to create better Instagram story, like you can do with videos and things like that. They're both paid apps, but I use them almost daily.
Yeah. Okay.
How about you?
I had a like affair with BombBomb, and I've recently, in the last 6-8 months, developed a love affair with it.
Yeah.
And it was, to some extent, going to the Richard Robbins conference and chat with more people. The screen record feature of it is killer. Did you use the term evergreen? Which I think, So like things like how to use DocuSign, what the purchase agreement documents look like, all these sort of things, just to have those in the tank and be able to flip them out to somebody like that on the fly, I think it's just killer. So I love that. I'm not, as much as I try to be, I don't have it. Like I've got a whole folder of Instagram apps on my phone that I never open. And I know, and I got to check out Mojo, but it's most of the new stuff that I've been working on is just client-based stuff.
I think, as it should be, to be honest.
But that being said, I know there's some tools out there that can make, the use of the phone and whatever we're doing out there on a daily basis, make it more useful. I got my mobile microphone and my ring light. So, as far as I'm concerned, that's a wrap,
Another good one, just for like, it's not an app, but rev.com. So
Okay.
they'll do the captions for your videos. So they'll make the caption file. And it's like $1.25 a minute. It's amazing. That's how I get subtitles in all my videos.
That's killer, because I've been going on to YouTube and doing their where they generate it.
It's not the same. Yeah.
And 30 minutes later. So rev.com, that's huge. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's like $1 American a minute or something, and they'll do transcribing it, or they'll actually just write a blog post for you, so you can choose. Like you have to choose one or the other, but it's great.
You doing subtitles in all your video?
Not everything, because people are actually home now and they can listen with volume. But previously, yeah, because I knew a lot of people were seeing it at work, but they couldn't listen, and I'd still want them to follow along with what I was saying. So I used it less now, but I still would highly recommend it.
Yeah. Cool. I'm going to check that out, rev.com. I was on Google trying to find something like that, and I just gave up. So
it's awesome. It's super easy. Yep.
All right, buddy. Not to put you on the spot, 30, 60, 90 days. What do you sense is coming along as far as we get through the summer?
Yeah, so I feel like most of the sellers that would have been spring market sellers, very much depending on if camps are canceled for kids or not. Okay, which you think that's more than 50 people for the most part. They probably are going to be. I think a lot of people, the typically quiet July, August market, I think actually a bunch of listings are going to come out because everyone's in a holding pattern right now. So that's where I think it's going. I can't guess on prices, but I think we'll see pretty early, like as the economy slowly opens and listings come out. Okay, how many buyers are coming out of the woodworks listing? I think in the next 30 days I'll have a more clear, like, well, here's what I think this is going to look like. But in any market, home sell in any market. So it's shifting expectations and educating your clients and making them understand, like, if you promise them the world of February's market, it's not going to be, you're wasting everybody's time. So show them what's going on.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. The countdown's on. I got 1:43 seconds left.
Okay.
So I want to say thank you to everybody who joined and hung in there and visited. That was great, Tom. I appreciate your time doing that too.
Yeah, thank you.
If nothing else, rev.com, you just kind of revolutionized my existence with that one.
So they'll make the CSV file, which you can upload to the YouTube or Facebook one. If you want to burn it into the video, I can show you how to do that on Final Cut Pro as well. But the CSV file they'll give you. Okay, I'm going to bug you about that. Yeah. All right. Thanks, everybody, Tom included. And stay safe, everybody. Patrick, please hit save and share this. Oh, God. Yeah, so when it cuts us off, click save and share. I will. I will not screw it up. Okay. Awesome. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, guys. Take care, everyone. Bye.